Welcome everyone to SaaScast, the podcast that talks you through the steps you need to future-proof your product, whether that's building the ultimate marketing team or taking your products global. Our guests will help you grow, scale up, and work smarter. Hi Sarah, thanks so much for joining us on SaaScast today.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Super excited.
Going to be awesome. I think our listeners would just love to hear a little bit more about you first and your background and your area of expertise.
Yes, no problem. So long story short, I've been in the rev type of business the last 22 years. I've been in sales for a long time. And I have done all the individual contributor roles, all from SDR up to VP sales, those type of movements in my career. And the last 13 years I've spent in the SaaS industry. So I worked for several different SaaS companies, mainly coming in when we've been, like, say, 5 to 10 people, then going on a journey and then sort of exiting when we've been at a certain size. And I've also been in scale-ups, a few of them. So I'm basically all about SaaS. I've been in the industry for a long time, and I'm very, very focused on sales and revenue. That's been my sort of types of roles that I've had. I've also spent a couple of years at an agency where I came in, actually, I think I was the 5th person. We sold and exited when we were 45 to another bigger agency in the Nordics. And I worked a lot with SaaS companies as customers, then as a consultant and also head of growth for that agency. I was also on the board. And through that process, I got to work with a lot of different SaaS companies at the same time in the consultancy sort of stretch setup. And I did everything from training salespeople in their teams to understand what marketing was about, because this is a couple of years ago. Not everyone understands still to this day what sales is about and how it's connected to marketing. And then I also spend a lot of time doing training when it comes to moving salespeople to a skill set where they can actually use the channels that are available today to do really, really good outreach and driving deals to come to close, right? Mm-hmm. So I've done a lot of training throughout my years. I also have my own business where I also do a lot of training. So training and moving people has always been, as soon as I started learning things myself, I wanted to share. That's just sort of an instinct I have. So I figured this amazing thing out. I now want to help other people understand or see or learn how to do these things too. And when you come up to a higher level of organization, when you start working on strategic side instead of operational, you sort of understand how difficult it is for people to move and change. So that's sort of been, I remember I was at Vinu for a couple of years where I was responsible for business development. I was head of business development, but the title was sort of made up by me and CEO because they were on a point where they were going from startup mentality to scale up, right? I think we were 180 FTEs at the time, going out globally into mainly the European area, but they also wanted to go into the States. And they were looking to sort of get to a point where they could start replicating what was going well, the scaling part of the business. And we did programs. So I was the head of responsible for managing and developing all the skill enhancement programs behind the scenes to get all the individuals in that SaaS company to understand how to grow their skills to better meet customers, both on customer success, on sales, and on marketing, because marketing and sales needs to have a joint collaborative message, and so does customer success. So that's typically one of the types of jobs where I invented the role myself with the CEO, and then we put me in place to do a specific type of work over a limited amount of time to get people to come to a point where they all knew what to do and how to do it well. So yeah, training is a passion of mine, and so it feels. So that was maybe a long story. Long.
No, it's fine. I love hearing about that. And I totally agree with you. I think it's just one of those things, isn't it? Some people have it in them that they just feel like they have that instinct that they want to nurture and mentor people.
Yes, very much so. And also at scale, because I think that's one of the things that a lot of SaaS companies struggle with today. How do we train and develop people's skill set at scale? Because we were I was joining an AI panel for one of the companies I'm advising for now, which is Velocity AI, a new platform for sales coaching live, right? With AI's help. And we were sitting in a panel discussion with a bunch of other leaders that were all working in sales enablement. So VP sales enablement or head of sales enablement, this new type of new role that's been invented which is basically helping salespeople and customer success people do more revenue, because that's the baseline. Normally that has landed on leaders before. Their managers, the team's manager has been the person to enable the team members to achieve really good results. And now they're looking to sort of put that as a role. And we were having a discussion how different sales enablement roles looks in different companies, because we haven't really figured out what they're supposed to do yet on a scalable level, right? Because how do we get a structure on a strategy that we have for sales enablement to trickle down into the organization? How do we get that to actually come down to the person on the floor, who's the IC, the individual contributor, to be able to maximize the ARR for the year? Like we need to figure out how to get that to work. And I think these are, I don't know, nuts that I would love us to be able to crack and discuss more in the episode.
Yeah, definitely. I want to dive into that more. So what are some of the, obviously these people scale, they get to the level of leadership positions because they have considerable prowess in selling and they know how to do it. So then don't you just think, well, obviously they're going to be able to pass it on, this knowledge. Where does the complication come in? Where does the struggle come in? And what have you witnessed yourself? What are some of the common pitfalls that you've seen?
Yes, I think there are several different sort of moving parts to this. So first of all, people who are great in sales aren't necessarily good leaders or good teachers. That's just not how it is. I know we want it to be, but it's not. And you're also lifting out an individual contributor that's giving you a lot of revenue out of that position, which is objectively unsmart. Even if it is the only road they can go, we need to figure out how to do that well. And secondly, most of the people that are really amazing at sales, and now I'm going to talk to founders, because let me say it like this. Most companies that succeed have founders who were amazing at selling at the start, right? Because they sold to investors, they sold to staff that joined the company, they sold to the first 10, 20 big accounts, they sold ongoingly for the first couple of years to get the business up and running. And if you don't have that skill or take that skill in, most technical founders take it in with someone else to co-found, right? To sell the concept, the vision, the idea. And those people are, if you ask them what they do well in sales, it will be like, I don't know, I just talk to people. And behind the scenes of that statement is perfect, pristine market knowledge, perfect, pristine knowledge of the skill sets that is required to solve a problem that the customer has, perfect intro into what the customer is struggling with because they know their market so well, and also a lot of personal passion for their own wallet and their baby and their company, right? So it's a lot of things going on behind the scenes for a person to be just talking to people and get investment because there are things behind the scenes. And the challenge with replicating that behavior down into the organization has to do with method. We have a tendency of talking about sales methodology, like Medic and BANTS and all these type of 90s, 80s type of sales methodologies that people are still implementing, by the way. And focusing on that instead of wondering what is it that the CEO or the founder does in meetings. And I remember I've done this in all the companies I've joined. The first 3 months have always entailed going with the founder to meetings with customers and just paying attention. And then we can start detracting out information of how they do the messaging when it comes to vision and mission and why they're there and what problems they solve. And that we can turn into a playbook. But most companies don't do that because they think it's impossible. We can't clone Andrew or Jonas or whoever is running the company or Filippa. We can't clone her. But the thing is, most of the things that are done in these meetings is playbook material friendly. We just don't do the effort. So we sort of take in a few individual contributors in our sales team, revenue teams. Those are the starting points, and they follow the founder and they go with her or him on meetings. And then they start finding their own voice in that message. And then they do great. And then we start growing the revenue team. And here is where the disconnect happens. So the disconnect happens when the team is so big and it's filled with more junior people that hasn't been with the founder on meetings. And the founder can't go on meetings with all the junior people because then it would take years before everyone is on board and can start delivering money. So the people who have already learned this, they are keeping it to themselves because we don't touch them because they're doing budget every month. We're leaving them alone. And then we take in the VP of sales. And the VP of sales comes in with a bulk of information about the things that they have done in the past that often includes BANT and Medic and all the other things. And then they start training that, and suddenly we have salespeople doing demos in the first meeting, which the founder would never do, right?
Yeah.
So the disconnect becomes when we start scaling, because then the secret sauce, the mission, the vision, the stories, all the things that are the soft parts of the sales communication that relates to market knowledge and knowledge of the challenge the customer is facing, and knowledge about how we solve that challenge, and knowledge about that role's problems and challenges and existential confirmation in why they're in their role, that sort of gets lost.
Yes.
And I think that's a big problem.
Yeah. So do you think then, to sort of put it in other words, does it come from being the more people you bring in, the more disconnected they become from the mission statement of the company and the vision of the company?
Yes, 100%. And they also don't have the same reason to educate themselves on the buyer and the market conditions. They don't have the same reasoning, because the founder, again, this is his or her baby. If the company goes bad, it's their entire life, right?
Yeah.
A salesperson that you hire in a new sales team, they have none of these connections to the actual business. They are hired, they are staff, and they shouldn't have that connection. But the question then becomes, what would make these people sit down evenings without getting paid for it and research the market, or interviewing buyers, or doing any of these things? And that comes down to management. Management has to provide these intels in a way where it's consumable for a salesperson that then they can go out and use in their sales conversations. But instead of extracting that knowledge from the CEO or the founder and then pulling it into the organization with ongoing training on these parts of the conversation that you will have with customers. Because to be honest, if you want to learn Medic, go to YouTube. Medic as a structure is not something that you need a trainer to tell you about. If you want to have a sales methodology in place when it comes to the steps you need to take and decision makers you need to understand, and who's the champion, these things we can learn online. And it's the same with most platforms. Methodology and platform is the same here. We can go online to YouTube and learn this. What we can't learn is the story that the founder got from the first enterprise account they closed. That we can't find on YouTube. So we're sort of focusing on practicing and training on the wrong things. We're also not really measuring and following up either of these types of trainings. So even if you do sort of founder-led sales in your organization, where you get the founder to sit down and, I don't know, record 10 videos where they tell the stories that you can push out to the sales organization, we're not following up. How many times did you actually tell this story in your first meetings this week? How often did you? We don't know how to do this. We're struggling. There's another poll called Sales Training's Dreadly Sins that I've been on too. And a lot of these their episodes talk about how sales training and training overall is so broken because we don't even know what to measure. And that also came up in the sales enablement sort of all table that we had last week, that we can't. We're putting people in a situation where they're sat down for 3 hours to do a workshop afternoon to kick them off and get them all excited about the new methodology. And then we do that monthly, and we think that that's a good program, right? And we do it monthly, and we then don't follow up what they're doing on a weekly basis related to what we're trying to train them. We keep the same KPIs we set out from the start, and then we train them in something new, and then we don't measure it. So this is a broken process in many ways, which leads to sales enablement sort of struggling with, where should I put my efforts? Because we have, I don't know what it was, the attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds, and we have 8.25 or something. That was the latest research I learned. So micro learning and working with these things in incremental waves, that's where AI is such a big deal for sales now too, because we're trying to figure out how can we be live with our sales reps to see what they're doing? How can we coach them live? Or how can we take away some admin tasks so they can learn things instead? But it's a struggle to understand how to do this well in companies. I don't know your experience, because I'm curious, since you've been interviewing a lot of people talking about these type of things within SaaS, how to grow and scale a business. Your experience, is there many people who say we know exactly how to train our people?
No, not really.
Right?
I mean, it's interesting because I think that seems to be a consensus, and it kind of sounds a little bit, I don't want to say cheesy, but when you do say it, sometimes it does. When you say oh, we have to get people to believe in the story of the product. And, you know, like people these days are very savvy and very cynical. So people will look at that and be kind of like, oh yeah, well, that's easier said than done. You know,
Oh yeah, it is.
everyone's going to say that. I guess
is.
I think about some sales experiences that I've been in where like somebody's trying to sell me something. And I think like, when is it most convincing? And when am I sort of captivated by the message? And I kind of think it's usually when I believe that they have a sense of pride in the thing that they're actually selling.
Yes. And when they love what they're putting in front of you,
they
right?
really believe it.
Yes.
And to just bring up an example of this that I've seen in companies, I always have that experience with Apple, actually.
Yes, right.
You know, when Apple, whenever I go into the Apple store or I talk to them on the phone, I get this sense that there's like somehow something is happening there where they're managing to communicate the message of the company story to where the people selling it on the ground are really in touch with the product, the problems that it solves, why it's valuable. And I don't know how they do it, frankly. I don't know if you have more insight into that. But I think it like you said, it's something about, you can have all the methodologies in the world, but it's that softer side of it.
Yes.
It's so hard.
And the training of softer skills is something that, because I've trained a lot of sales reps, like a lot. But I've also participated as a student in a lot of sales courses, both online, physically. I've done all the different structures because I'm a knowledge craving person. Personally, I've done it without the companies paying for it. I've done it when the companies paid for it, but I keep educating myself because I realize that the more I know, the less I actually know. It's a challenge ongoingly because I don't have enough time before I die, right? I don't have enough time before I die to learn all the things I want to know. And I think that when it comes to, because this has to do with culture, Apple is culture. I had my first extra job. I was working at SaaS, which is a gym chain in Sweden and in the Nordics. And I was selling gym memberships, right? I was super excited about the product. I worked out for a year. I lost 30 kilos with training. I was all excited because I was sold on my own story, right? And the culture within that company, this was business to consumer. So we were talking to people, normal people who should start training, right? Which is where I started. I then went over to the business side of it. But when I started, it was all about the people. And I was so passionate when I came in. And then they took me and they fine-tuned my messaging with the culture they had. Because everyone who worked at this company, I would come into reception 5 a.m. when the club would open. And the person working the reception was like, "Good morning." Like, okay, you're really happy to be here. I feel happy to be here now too. Like it was they sort of hired based on the culture and then they trained whatever skills. And it's the same that I'm sure Apple focuses on. I will train you in the technology. We just want you to be super excited about the brand that we are. You are our crew. It's a proudness to this. Yeah. And I think we're sort of missing out on that a lot in SaaS companies because we don't. And also our incentive models, to be fair, I'm going to take a sidetrack now. Our incentive models does not show us that that's what is important. It's not. So we're incentivized on, in revenue at least, to generate revenue, but we're not incentivized in how we make our customers feel. Even if we work with NPS and things like that, we're not actually being paid on that type of narrative. We're not being paid on getting a customer to go out of a meeting and be like, I feel moved now. Yeah. We're not paying people to do that. We're paying people to move people where they sign a contract, not to where we move them emotionally.
So the KPIs are kind of weighted in the quantitative side.
Yes, always the quantitative side. And now we see companies starting to do, we will do how happy the customers is too, but it's an additional on top and it's not going to drive what you get paid. And that's a challenge, right? Because we're trying to, and we're also fostering a young generation of salespeople because a lot of people come from school and this is one of the first jobs they get as a junior SDR, as an example. And you come into this role and you know very little of the world, let alone business. And then you go through an onboarding of 6 weeks, and then you get it. If you're lucky, you get onboarding. You get onboarding 6 weeks, a computer and the phone, and then they're like, "Find your voice. Good luck." And then the sales manager who's supposed to train you just goes away, and then he comes back once a month. And this is not to foster really creative, because sales is a very creative process. It's a very creative process. It should be a very emotional process. Like we are we are sort of trying to take the emotions out of it when it comes to what KPIs we measure. But at the end of the line, emotional connection to the person you're selling to, and emotional connection to your business and your proudness in that will drive you to close more deals. How do we train that? How do we train that? And that's the ongoing question I think we should think about, not how do we implement Medic? And I can give you a clear example of how this sort of fails too when it comes to methodology. I was working at Lido, and this was my last employment before I went into VP sales at another company. So 2 years ago, and we had a revenue team working that wasn't succeeding. We were failing. Everyone was failing in the different teams in the country hubs, right? And they decided that the solution to this is Medic, right? So we're failing our numbers, and the solution is Medic. We're not going to interview the salespeople to figure out what the actual problem is. We're not going to look at the average age and understand that everyone, they know nothing, right? About the world, not about sales methodology, about the world. They don't know anything. And they were struggling, right? So Medic was supposed to be implemented. And the implementation, and Lido is a company that's growing very fast. So the reason why we didn't do it properly was because of the high-speed nature of a startup. I fully understand that. I just think that we should have thought it one more step through, because then we could have built a program where the salespeople trained each other on the things they were good at, and we would have become a lot better. So we did Medic. Implementation was 3 sessions, PowerPoints, learn yourself. Now we start implementing. We will measure you on this.
Yeah.
And that's not workable. And yet a lot of SaaS companies do this because they feel like this is something they need to do, but they're not looking at the end line, what we're actually trying to solve. Because if we were to look at the end line of what we're trying to solve, we could say, okay, so we have no idea what ICPs we're targeting. Maybe that's a challenge for sales.
Yeah.
Maybe we should work on getting a really crisp ICP for each individual so they know what they should learn more about, and then do courses on the industry knowledge they need to get them to be able to sell with confidence and trust to those accounts. Yeah. Because then we would have stayed in our old sales methodology, because the problem lied before it started, before the sales methodology even kicked in.
Yeah.
And these are changes that we're trying to make, that sales enablement will have a big part in, to drive, to communicate with people doing the work, and putting that into a strategy up top, so we can then sizzle it down. But I really believe that all salespeople that doesn't have a founder-led sales approach, all of you go to your founder and you tell that person, please let me tag along to 3 meetings. No founder will say no to you. They will see you as someone who's putting their best foot forward. So if that's not happening on a company level, make it happen for you. Make it happen for you. Go to your founder and say, I want to come with you on 3 customer meetings. And then you just listen, take notes, and you register everything this person is talking about. And then you train it to find your voice in that story, and then you use that story. That's one incremental change you can make tomorrow to increase how your sales meetings go. And once you've done that, you can tell your founder that we have cracked it now. Let's do this for all the salespeople. And then you can help your company in the same way.
That's great. Yeah, I love that. You know, one of the things I think is really interesting as well, to go back to kind of incentivization.
Yes.
You were talking about how, you know, they don't prioritize the kind of emotional connection enough, and they don't measure it. One of the things that I wonder, and I don't know if you've experienced this as well.
Yes.
I think sometimes what happens is people are very driven by their KPIs, and they're very serious about them, but they're not actually thinking about the how it feeds into the overall business and how it impacts everyone else. So sometimes somebody will come to them and say, okay, but I'm struggling with mine because of something that's being implemented here. And the reaction will be, well, I don't care about that. Because I'm eating
because that's
KPIs.
Not my job. Not my job, right?
Yeah, it's not my job. I'm just wondering, that must be the kind of thing that's really detrimental to a business overall.
Yes.
And I wonder if it's one of the negative side effects sometimes of KPIs, really. And I'm just wondering if I could pick your brains. How do you not only sort of prioritize emotions, but also kind of the togetherness and community of an organization, so that people care about other people's goals, so they care about sharing knowledge with people who are below them? How do you do that?
Yes, so I can tell you an example that I did at Viner, because I believe in what we're talking about now. I think this is very important. I think that the best salespeople are people who know how to train other people and teach other people. I think it's an essential skill because you're training and educating your customers all day long. So getting people who are really good, because most people have a few parts of a sales process, as an example, where they're really excelling, like they're excelling. So let's say that we have an SDR who's amazing at booking the first meeting because he does a lot of research a specific way. That is a concept we can replicate, but it's in his head. His manager knows it, that he's doing this amazingly well, but no one else does. And we're not taking advantage of his knowledge. And no one is giving him a stage to train people on. Because that's not the program you have set up in your company. You have one-offs here and there where you do sales training with some random white dude that comes in from the side and talks about sales who hasn't done sales for 20 years. That's the training we have. So imagine a situation, and this is what I did at Vinus. So we did a program, and like we can take revenue stuff as one of the tracks, because we had several tracks depending on what role you had, where all training modules are led by the individual in the company who is the best at that part of the sales process. So they train the rest of the team. And then that material gets prepared, put into the playbook, and then that recording gets recorded. So new people who come in to join can look at the recording and go through the track after the fact. So we put the best people to train us in. So if you're really good at creating emotional connection in the first meeting, and we can see that by how the customer interacts with you during all the recorded sessions you have of your first meeting, we see that you're really getting people invested emotionally. We can also see that on sales velocity and close rate, obviously, and ARR, and how big of a deal we had, etc. There are other key metrics to show that this person is connecting emotionally, because we are selling to human beings. But we see that this specific person, this AI, he is really good at creating emotional connection with his prospect. So then he trains on emotional intelligence in your first meeting. And then we follow up by looking at specific key metrics when it comes to how we can help everyone else start doing it. And it can be as simple as asking a genuine question about how the person feels today. A genuine question. Like, these are simple but untangible for most people things that happens in a meeting. So if there's a child walking by in the background, instead of just ignoring the fact that there is a child walking by in the background of the meeting, you say, hey, oh, I see you have your child there. So are they home from school? What's happening? Just a minute or two to actually acknowledge that I'm talking to a person who has a child there. And most salespeople, they don't do things like that. Yeah. Which is insane to me, because people have lives. We're talking to decision makers who all are like we are. They're the same people. They have children, they have lives, they have hobbies, they have emotions, they have trust issues. Like, they have all of these things that normal people have.
They have emotional baggage. Yeah.
Right. They have a backpack of shit, man. They've talked to salespeople and been disappointed before. You have to build a trust. And especially, I was at a conference a few weeks ago, speaking of trust, and there was Gartner did a show, a keynote where they talked about that 3 out of 5. Okay, look, so we sell to 5 people. 3 of these people will regret buying a software. 3 out of 5.
Oh my God.
And the reason why is because our entire process in SaaS is broken. This is what I'm talking about, because we are extending how much we are promising them, as an example, because we are so pent on doing the KPI that it doesn't matter that the person on the other side who makes this decision will lose all trust with their organization, might get fired because the wrong investment. Yeah, these things doesn't matter to us.
Yeah, that goes back to the problem I was saying, I think, a little bit, where it's like, well, I've done my job.
Yes.
I got him to buy.
Yes, so I got paid now, so I don't care.
I don't care what happens after that. Yeah, and that comes down to a lack of pride, doesn't it? Again,
yes, and also a lack of communication about other things. So how many sales training programs, revenue programs have you ever encountered where one of the modules had to do with how to look yourself in the mirror, or one of the modules had to do with, so how do you maintain the relationship you built with your customer after they signed? Or it has to do with, how do you take responsibility and accountability for the number of churns you get? Because even if you pass it along to a customer success, that doesn't mean that it's not your trust that you put into this customer and they put their trust in you. How do you take accountability for your customer's churn, even if you don't get paid for it? Why should you care? Career development. So these are things that we don't talk about in training. And emotional connection is one of these things, because once you start doing the work to get emotionally connected to your customers, to actually connect with them on a human level, you start feeling a bit more accountable for their success or failure once they signed too. So we are at a waypoint, I think, where we're looking at AI trying to change and remove salespeople, right? We talked about this in the AI circle too last week. So how long will SMB sales reps be needed? How will they be needed? If a customer is this bad at doing research that 3 out of 5 is going to regret their purchase later, if they can get access to an AI engine who can help them make the smartest decision for them, no matter what software there is, no human connection whatsoever, you buy it online and you just use the tool and you get onboarded online with the AI's help as well. What do we need the salespeople for? And this is an interesting conversation, because if we as salespeople don't move to an emotional connection and don't move to a place where we know a lot about our industry and we are trusted advisors, we are basically screwed. And so is your entire revenue team, because you need to start moving your structure over to a completely online business if you only sell SMB. Enterprise will be the only deals that will be left in a few years.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I suppose the answer then is we need to double down on the things that only we can do as human beings,
exactly,
in order to stay alive. Basically.
Yes, and that is not understanding who your champion is, because that a computer can count based on the notes from your meeting and the recording. We can count who is the champion in the room with the help of AI. You don't have to do that. What you have to do is connect with the champion. Yeah. That's what you have to do. And how do you do that then? You do that through vision, mission, storytelling, understanding the market, knowledge that they don't have about their own business.
I think it's like you really, just by showing up to the call as a person and being faced with someone, it's almost like half the battle is won in a way, because like I think people appreciate as soon as they're talking to a human being, they appreciate that puts your company up a little bit. In their estimation. So I think that once you're there, I feel it's still a hell of a uphill climb to get someone to actually sell. But I do think that like actually just being there with someone in person makes a big difference.
And want to be there as a person with a person, because one of the things when we measure and incentivize robotic behavior, we will get robotic salespeople, people who come into the meeting and see cash in front of them, not a person. And I have had I've had so many stories throughout my career where I've done this. So because I really always go in and I also always choose companies where I love the product. So the proudness comes from loving the product. I always choose these companies because I can't sell things I don't like. I just can't. I've tried it. This doesn't work for me. So coming into meetings and being understanding, I can give you an example. So there was a person we were at our 4th meeting. Everyone was ready to go. We had the C-level suite has been in the 3rd meeting. I was in the 4th meeting with the dude. We were just going to do the schedule for the onboarding and the implementation of the product. We were doing project management work at this point. The contracts was in legal. Everything was prepared. The C-level was just nodding. We're ready to go. And I come into this 4th meeting with this dude, and his energy is way off. He has been engaged. He has been onboarded in the conversation. He's been committed. He was my champion. He was also a decision maker, but he was my champion. And I come into this meeting, and his energy is completely different. And I'm like, okay, so he's not talking to me properly now. He's not really engaging in the conversation. So I just look, okay, so, and in my head, I'm going through emotions now. We end the meeting. We have sort of a plan. It's very sketchy. And I'm going out of the meeting. I'm like, what the fuck happened? I don't know what happened. What has happened between the meeting last week and this meeting? And I'm lying in bed at night thinking about these things because I'm a nerd and I can't help myself and I don't understand what is happening. And when I don't understand something, it frustrates me to the point where I'm willing to look stupid, to ask questions. I don't care. I just want to understand. I'm a bit autistic. This is a problem sometimes, and sometimes it's not. Anyways, and the day after, I actually go to his office because I can't get this out of my head, because it's a big contract, and that's one thing. It's also a big implementation. It's also a big impact on their business. This is an important deal for me and for them, because we found all the reasons why they need to do this. And we have connected when it comes to all the benefits that they will see. Everything is there. So what is going on? So I go to his office without calling him, and I go up the elevator, because this was in Stockholm. Go up the elevator. I go up to his receptionist desk, and I'm like, so is he in? She was like, yeah, he's here. I was like, okay, can you call him and just ask if I can get 10 minutes? So she calls in and he says yes to accepting me in. So I go in and I sit down and I was like, okay, so I don't care if the deal doesn't happen, but I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Can you please help me out? Am I imagining that the energy was completely off in our last session yesterday? And he's like, no, you're right. No, you're right, but I can't tell you why. And I'm like,
that's awful.
I was like, okay, so can you give me a hint of are you okay personally? Are you okay? Are you physically okay? Is your family okay? Is this work related? Like, are you good? It's like, no, this is business related. So I can't really tell you, but okay, I will phrase it like this. And then it tells me that they are merging with another company and the contract were signed the day before in the meeting, like before the meeting we had. So it's like, so everything is stopped, but it's not official. So I can't tell you what the company is, what we're going to do and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, so it wasn't me that missed anything in the process. This actually was completely out of my control. And you guys didn't even know about it because he was the CFO. He wasn't informed until the contract because this was a big merger with the boards involved. So he wasn't involved. He had just delivered numbers. He didn't know it was going to happen. And then I was like, okay, great. So this isn't because we missed a beat. We both were on board. I didn't misread anything. He was like, no. And then I tell him, look, okay, so I understand that the deal is not happening now. I don't care about that. What I will do now is introduce you to another customer that I have that just went through a merger acquisition with 3,000 people on each side. And you mentioned that it's a similar size company, what the struggles were. So I will connect you with him so you can have a bouncing board outside of this business, because this business will be highly political and very hard to be in within 3 months, right? So just to give you sort of a chance to defend whatever you need to defend and see if you want to stay or not, and if giving you some tools, because he was the CFO that stayed. The other dude, the contact I wanted to give him, he was the dude who won. The other dude got lost. So he has some things he can help you with to better understand how to play this journey. And he was super thankful. And then I connected them. And then it took 8 months. And then he called. He was like, so now the merger is complete from a culture perspective. We're ready to move forward now. And if I wouldn't have treated this situation the way I did, first of all, I wouldn't have known what the fuck went wrong. So I could have let that slide to close lost in a few months and just like, I don't know what happened there. I'm going to leave it alone.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known what happened and I wouldn't have gotten that phone call. And that was one of the biggest deals I closed when I was at that specific business selling ERP, because he continued to trust me. He won the battle of the merger battles that happens when you have two exactly the same roles. And then when he was ready, he called me back. And if I wouldn't have approached this as a human to human, actually caring about what happened, I would never have done either of these things.
Yeah, that's superb. So I think you're showcasing a lot of skills there, and the first one I think is just being like emotionally in tune during that meeting.
Yes.
Just being able to sense that something's changed.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the first thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And then, like you said, that almost like, if you called it autistic, I'm going to call it obsessive quality, where you can't get it out of your head.
No, it's impossible.
And you have to resolve it rather than, I suppose, having the mentality of, I mean, to be honest, like I'm a little bit in awe of salespeople. I really am. Like I don't have it in me. So when I see the qualities that they have to succeed, and I have been on calls with them, and I've seen them like completely turn someone around from being like, no, I'm not interested in this, to suddenly being interested. I think they're like superheroes, frankly. I can't believe it sometimes.
The really good ones are very similar to superheroes. They're very
what they're able to do. And I think it is very much that quality as well, of just being emotionally connected and feeling such a sense of pride when it doesn't work out, that you have to follow it through.
I have to understand what's happening. And the thing is, but I want to make something clear, because you're onto something now that I think is super interesting. I am, as a person, extremely introverted.
Mm-hmm.
I am, as a person, completely, when I grew up, I had very few friends. I was very shy. I couldn't interact with people. I was very, again, the autistic draw and all I'm bipolar too. Like all the things was just, I wasn't comfortable with people because I didn't understand them. I didn't understand how they worked. So this is trainable skill. This is trainable skill. And I'm telling you this because you were like, I don't have it in you. This is not something you are born with. It's not. The best salespeople I've seen perform magic are extreme introverts. They listen, they listen, they listen. They find the tiniest patterns, and then they're like, "Ooh, this I can." So what happens if I do? "Ooh, that's interesting." Then something happened now. These are the best salespeople I have seen. Yeah. So the extroverted salespeople who talk a lot, these are not the people who see patterns. These are not the people who read differentiators. The reason why I'm so good at reading people is because I didn't understand shit when I was growing up, because my mind wouldn't allow me. I didn't understand how people's facial expressions, what they were conducted about. So I've studied psychology and understanding like physical body language. What does it mean? And yes, I have an autistic part in me who just needs to know, because how will I interact in the world if I don't understand how people work? Mm-hmm. And I didn't understand it. So this is a trainable skill. And now the question becomes, what is it that we're training our salespeople in? And if we're not training them in the skills I am talking about now, how will they survive when what they can do can be replaced like that?
That's really really the core of this issue, isn't it?
Yes.
That's really why we're talking about this now.
Yes.
Is because we are seeing this shift.
Yes.
And I think people who don't understand really like the emotional side of sales, much like people who don't understand the emotional aspect of, say, like, I don't know, conversion copywriting, for example.
Marketing.
Referring to content,
yes, I agree. Yes.
We'll say like, oh, well, AI can just do that. And it's like, well, AI can probably do it to a point, to a certain level, but they can't. But human beings are still, I completely think, if they step it up, no one can replicate that. But
this is the thing. If they step it up, you're on to exactly the thing, because it's the same with marketing, because marketing is also targeting what? People, man. We're targeting people in our communication. And stepping it up for sales means a different thing than it means for marketing. Because for marketing, it has to do with very much understanding the personal drivers behind the buyers that you're trying to talk to connect with them emotionally through copy, which is a lot harder than doing it like this. It's a lot harder because you can't read the reaction of the person yet. You don't know how they will react to a certain phrasing, right? So I can say a specific sentence, and I can straight away see and get your information back on how you react to that. Marketing cannot. So they need to step up in a different way. Well, when it comes to sales, we need to start understanding that we are responsible for creating an experience for our prospects and customers that no AI can do. How do we do that? By treating them like people. By training our soft skills, by training how to read the room, how to read people, by reading psychology, by understanding our market, by understanding our market fit, by interviewing our decision makers that are going to buy from us, so we know what they want and what they need and what they struggle with, properly know, without outsourcing that to marketing to do a buyer persona profile. So you need to go out and talk to your people, man. And this is things that we can structure and train them in how to do, to get them to become better at this.
Do you think that the remote work, that sort of how that's gained traction, do you think that's created some challenges as well? I wonder if there's out of the room syndrome. You've heard of that, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
So people who are coming in now, perhaps post-COVID, maybe.
Yes.
Who are not, they're not in the office, and they're not picking up on those skills necessarily that people who were first hires were just picking up on.
Yes.
Then maybe there's more of a need for, like you were saying, a playbook or some kind of methodology.
Yeah, the baseline things. But I think one of the things that is the opposite in the situation you're describing, my experience with salespeople is that the people who were really good in physical meetings before, they struggled a lot more when we went digital than the people who started digital. So the people who did their first SDR role or sales role that started only having discovery calls online, they learned how to look at the person instead of the camera. They learned how to look at the person's expressions. They learned how to be extra crystallized clear in their questions, because, I might have missed something now. So imagine a call when a salesperson is like, look, wait, I saw an expression now. Can you explain to me what went through your head now? Ask them. And then we will have an entire generation of salespeople be like, but you can't ask that. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. You can just ask them.
It's so funny, isn't it? Like I even think about little things. Like, when you're on a Zoom call and you can see yourself.
Yes.
I think we're distracted by the fact that we can see ourselves.
I know, right? You're like, my eyes is glitching. and actually learning to disregard. I had
learning to look at the person rather than yourself.
Yes. And I had a period when I started when I put a post-it on myself and I just looked at the person who was in the meeting. And it worked perfectly because then my eye wasn't distracted. And I remember, especially with Teams, when you're on the side, I just posted it myself on the screen, so I didn't see myself, and it became a lot more engaging meeting because I was in the meeting with the person looking at them, and they were looking at me on the other side or themselves, whatever works for them, and it was working a lot more fluent for me when I did that. And it's the same when you start recording videos for LinkedIn because you want to build a personal brand. Just post it yourself and record and just speak and be normal, be a person. And I think we're fast tracking to losing authenticity because we think that systems and methodologies are going to solve our problems. And at the base of the core of your business is people. Even if your platform is your baby, I'm sorry to tell you, but if you have a business-to-business SaaS, you are going to need to understand that unless you're planning to do it fully remote online, and I believe a lot of software vendors could do that already now, SMB market, fully remote onboarding, fully remote selling, fully remote with pricing and everything online, like Kajabi does. They sell an enterprise platform and SMB. They don't want to talk to me. I try to convert on a form on their website to get them to talk to me. And there is no form because they don't want to talk to me. They're like, here's the video. We don't care. We have online webinars once a week. You can join that if you want to see a demo. Like, we don't want to talk to you. And this is the future. And then we have the enterprise layer where we as salespeople can still excel and support customers in making the journey with us. Yeah. And that requires a whole different skill set. It's project management, it's soft skills, it's reading a room, it's understanding a decision-making tree, it's understanding an industry, it's so many other things than what we train AEs today.
Yeah.
And we need to get in the game.
So to round this off then, let's break it down into its most actionable form. What can we do? So you've already mentioned, I think it's a really good one, getting close to the founder, getting in on calls. I think it's a really good one and it's really actionable. And
it's for the individual contributor. As a company, there is a difference here. Because as an individual contributor, if your company hasn't understood this, that's the tip you can do. You can call your founder and ask to join meetings. But that's not scalable. The founder can't be in all the meetings with the salespeople. So as a company structure, you need to figure out, so what are we going to sell in 2 years? How are we going to sell in 2 years? What kind of skills and knowledgeable, marketable skill sets do we need in our sales teams? We might have a sales team of 50 reps now. In 2 years, we might need 10, but they will all focus on the big ARR, like the big deals only. The rest will be completely online. So you need to reset your entire product development to be an online onboarding engine for new SMB customers. We're not even touching them. And then we need to look at ICP. As a company, who are we actually talking to? And then we need to start looking at what the founder would do in these meetings. So how would they do 2 free of first meetings and 2 free of the second meetings with businesses? And we need to record it and we need to analyze him or her and what they talk about. And then we need to put that into material that we can share. We need to record our founder talking about the story so that salespeople can connect to his or her story and start telling them with their own words. We need to start measuring how many times you told story A to businesses this week. We need to start looking at what we want them to be in 2 years and then train them accordingly. And get ready to cut some people because you won't need your entire team. Well, I don't know how many, it's 23% of sales team members in SaaS companies who ongoingly succeed their budget. The rest does not. 23% take their quota ongoingly. The rest, 77%, doesn't take their quota ongoingly, monthly, quarterly. So we have 70% of a team of 10 people. 7 of these people will not do their quota. And for some reason, we're still carrying them along with us. Instead of making them into 10, we go to 6 people and we train them meticulously in the skills that the ones that are taking their budget every month are doing. Have them train the rest of the team. You don't need a lot of people. The idea that you throw in sales team into a SaaS company and they will just scale per EFT is bullshit. It doesn't work like that. I haven't seen any company where it works. And we still keep doing it, especially when money was free a couple of years ago. Then we did it a lot. That's why people are getting fired to the left and right today. So we need to figure out what we need as skill sets. And then we need to train them. And whatever your VP of sales founders, I'm talking to you now, whatever your VP of sales think is a good methodology, that is not your problem. Your problem is that Medic is not going to help your salespeople tell stories. It's not. It's going to help your salespeople understand what to do before and after a meeting. That's it. Inside the meeting, they're on their own. So it's time to start training them in how to do really, really explorative and experience-based customer meetings. And that's you did that in the start. You, founder, did that in the start. To your people you hire, to your investment board, you did it. So train them, but scale it. Don't do the going with the founder to each meeting, because then again, it will take forever for everyone to get onboarded. You need to scale that skill.
That's a great point. Yeah. How do you scale it? I think it's really important. 100%.
Yes.
Well,
so playbook material, recordings of the founder, and then start there. And start doing small things. One story. All the salespeople have to do one story that the founder has recorded and told them in all customer meetings to come in 2 weeks. One story. Let's see what happens with our numbers.
Yeah, and then measure it as well.
Measure. So did our LTV go up? Did the sales cycle shorten? What happened with that one story? Because you will find the proof you need in the numbers afterwards to continue doing these incremental changes over time.
It's really great. Thanks so much for this, Sara. It's been a really, really, really great chat. And I think we've not only had a great discussion, I think we have actually arrived at some potential solutions, which is what we always want. So thanks so much. I was wondering actually, like, because I just kind of want to ask one more general question about sales in general, because I'm really fascinated by it. Like I said, because I don't understand it. So I'm just wondering, like, what does going back in time, because it's an old profession, right? What's like the man, I don't know, in the medieval village who was successful at like selling his turnips door to door? What did he do? Have in common with the successful SaaS salesman now, like I guess what I'm asking is, what principles of sales have held true throughout all the time are still true now? Yeah, that's lovely. I have one thing. I will tell you a story about the dude in the medieval village. Okay, so he sells sheep. He sells sheep to people, right? So he sells his sheep and he trades it for other things from other people or for money, whatever. So he sells his sheep. That's his business. And he sells sheep to people all across the village and to other villages, the neighboring villages, right? And then he sells 3 sheep and they all die. And he has a choice now. He can ignore that they all died. This is a churn, by the way. He can ignore that they all died and not make any changes. He cannot go into his flock and make sure that no one else in the flock is sick so they won't die again. He can just ignore it and keep selling. That word of mouth that will happen in that village, no one will buy sheep from him anymore, unless he acts by taking care and accountability of the problem to prevent it to happen again. So a really successful salesperson in SaaS, like myself have been for years and years, I don't start my journey with the customer by the start of the sales process and end it at the sign. My sales process and my process with the customer, the journey starts by the first interaction and it ends when they have not churned year 1. Right. That's when it ends. I will keep the relationship going, but once they survive the first year, that means that the trust that they put in me worked. It was correct for them. They are staying because they are satisfied. What I promised was delivered. I will also actually step into steering group meetings and stuff once a quarter to make sure that the customer is happy. I don't let them go. And this is something I've seen with some salespeople in SaaS. The people who are really good at building career, they have their own portfolio of logos. They keep them and they take them with them because they promise what will be delivered and then they make sure it's delivered. So that's a principle that I have worked with since I started in sales. The people that I sell to, it should be a good fit and I should benefit their career, not mine, their. And this is the same with the word of mouth. So once that happens, you have a built up portfolio of people who trust you. So when you switch to your new job, they will hit you up on LinkedIn and be like, hi, should we buy something this time? What are you selling? And that's because they still trust me, because I didn't sign it and said bye and left the building. I actually stayed with them. So that's the principle that I think is super important. I think it's like little kind of like seemingly kind of superfluous actions that don't necessarily seem to have any benefit in the short term,
No.
you know, I think it's really incredible that actually, like,
I think it's very important. And the thing is, it's not only about the fact that the portfolio comes with me, because every time, so once I did, I don't know, my first 2 SaaS gigs, I changed to my 3rd role. I came in with a portfolio of 25 businesses where I have really good relationships. And they all bought my first 3 months of the new job, which meant that the first 3 months of my new job was me taking orders for a business I just started for. So how do you think that benefits my career long term? How do you think that benefits their career long term? They know that I won't sell if they shouldn't buy it in the new business I'm in. But the ones that should buy, I will sell to them, and they will have a great delivery again, and then again, and then again, because they trust me. But that comes with other accountability points. I have to make sure that I don't sell if I see that it's not a good fit. I have to turn down money if it's not a good fit, because otherwise I will lose this person, the sheep will die, and no one will buy from me of all the people they know. And this doesn't work for me as a person.
Thinking. I love that. I love having that ability to say, I don't think this is a good fit for you.
Yes.
That's incredible. Like, and you don't see that often, really.
I know, because no one is training the junior salespeople to look at their long-term career and what they impact in the business. Because you do impact your decision makers. If they make a decision that isn't panning out well, that means that your action of selling, even though you know you shouldn't, jeopardizes their career. Do you want to have that on you? I don't.
Yeah, that's certainly not. No. Well, thanks so much. It's been great. I'm going to have to wrap it up because I could talk. I mean, I could talk
of course.
But I could
no
talk
problem,
for another
no
hour,
problem.
honestly. But
we can do a follow-up in like a year, and we can do it.
But so if people want to find out more from you, then Sara, like LinkedIn. If you're open to questions and queries, and
please come and ask me things. I have a nerdiness in teaching things, so please don't hesitate to ask me things.
So I think you have a wealth of knowledge, and I think people are going to benefit from this discussion, but I think also from reaching out to you. I think they're really going to get something out of that.
I look forward to that too. Great. Sure. Thank you so much. Have a good day, and I'll talk to you soon online.
You too. Bye-bye.
Great.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of SaaScast. For more top insights from the leading minds in SaaS, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a thing.